Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show. I'm your host, John Duffy, and this is the 54th Live Courageously podcast show since I started the show about 2 years ago. Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and an unconscious theme for most of my life. Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, and not absence of fear. So let's meet today's courageous guest, Dennis Price. Dennis Price is a U.S. Marine Corps Force Recon, a scout sniper, a Ranger veteran who has deployed 7 times in the military and has served as a private military contractor as a sniper, mobile DDM, with OGA, other government agencies, NGOs, non-government agencies for 6 deployments. Dennis has attended various special operations schools as well as the head instructor for fieldcraft and stalking for the Army's Special Forces Sniper Course. Dennis Price was briefly in JSOC Tier 1 unit until his youngest daughter, Emilia, was born and diagnosed with 2 rare diseases, causing her to be hospitalized for 6 months from birth. After being life-flighted from Alabama to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Dennis talked to the doctors about the need, probability and frequency of having to be near the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And the doctors at that time said that Emilia will need to be 1 hour emergency range to a specialized hospital. The doctors also said that for her 2 rare diseases, there was only 2 options: Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and a hospital in Houston. Dennis made the decision to choose family at that time over career, and he ended his career at just under 15 years of service. Dennis is a Christian with a very strong faith in God, a loving husband, and a father of 4 beautiful kids. He's a boxing, Muay Thai, and Jiu Jitsu practitioner, enthusiast, and enjoys competing in various martial arts tournaments. Dennis is also the project manager for Mighty Oaks International, and Dennis now dedicates his life to precision rescues by using his special operations experience and skills to rescue sexually trafficked children, HVIs, Americans, and help those in need, both domestically and globally. Dennis continues to be a voice and act upon being a human rights activist, a humanitarian crisis specialist, and an evangelist. I'd like to welcome, greetings, brother. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. So I usually start the show out with 2 things, and I'm going to do the same this time. One is I ask my guests, where did we first meet? That's my first question. So if you want to address it, and I can kind of share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we met relatively recently at INDOC for a group called CERT, which is Search, Evangelize, Rescue, and Train, that helps rescue sexually trafficked children. So I was helping one of my close friends, Pastor Rudy Gonzalez, run an INDOC course for finding new operators for people who want to be the action arm and help support rescuing sexually trafficked children under the banner of Jesus Christ. So that's where we first met there. And while filming, I think the INDOC, we grew close. And then you mentioned your show, and you talked about, I think, Send Me. And I told you how I was involved in the Afghan withdrawal and the evacuations. And that's what sparked this conversation.
Yeah, I remember, I was there filming with a buddy of mine, Lou Simon, the 2 of us, producing partner, and we were there to support CERT. And I got a chance to meet you, and the training was pretty intense, but it was not only just training, but it was actually going out and trying to rescue young women who were being sex trafficked. So, filming some of that, and like you said, then getting the chance to kind of, when I interviewed you on the beach that day, got a little bit of hearing your background, and I was like, wow. I mean, you had just kind of worked through so many things, both in the military and now in civilian life. And I just felt like you have a powerful, powerful story to share. And I was just, I'd love to have you on the show. So thank you, man. I really appreciate you being here. And, out of that, the other thing I ask is, what does Live Courageously mean to you, since that's the name of my show? And obviously you've had a life where you've exhibited that in so many different ways. But, why don't you tell us what that means to you?
So in the Marine Corps, we talk about, honor, courage, commitment, the core fundamentals, a decent amount. And I've got pounded that in my head my whole career of what is courage, And I hear a common one because the root word of courageously is courage, and it is courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to overcome fear and to do what needs to be done. I think you mentioned that earlier in the show, but I absolutely love that. And I never truly understood it. And I hear all these amazing war stories of all these heroes doing amazing things. And everyone always asks them if they were afraid. And only until recently with the Afghan evacs did I ever experience something where I think would deem that definition. And I thank you for giving me props about my whole career, but really I think it was just that recently in life of trying to do the right thing when tensions and dangers were extremely high, and we chalked up that we would most likely die, but it had to be done because it was the right thing to do.
Well, we can jump ahead and jump back since you just mentioned that, I think, because that was one of the things you had mentioned to me when we were talking. And like you said, that was so important to you because it was a volunteer effort on your part that you didn't have to. You were not in the military anymore. You were out of the military. And it was obviously one of the more dangerous realities because the U.S. government made a decision to evacuate Afghanistan. But unfortunately, they left a lot of people behind, both translators and American citizens, and all kinds of people were left behind. And at that point, you chose to get into making a difference. So tell us about that. That moment in your life. Why did you make a decision? And tell us what that was and what you accomplished. And then I'm going to play a quick video at some point. But first, I'd rather hear it from you because you experienced it.
Yeah. So for the Afghan evacs, and it's a pretty long story of, and I'll reference God pretty much throughout the whole time, because before him, I was an extremely broken man. And even though when you labeled my career, it sounds great, but that's like a decade and a half of pain, torture, misery, suffering, all up until that forged me to eventually be the guy who I am today. And through falling on my face over and over and almost coming to the point where I would take my own life, that's when then God intervened in my life, showed me the way. And, through my testimony of, which I'll probably say later on or whatever, but is that I felt that God called me to go and to save these people. I felt literally the audible voice of God come down and tell me, you have to go save them. And it felt like I got struck by lightning when that happened. I was walking the halls of what used to be called Blackwater. Like I said, I felt like I got struck by lightning. Every fiber in my being, every hair on my body was standing up. And that's when I heard, you have to save them. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what happened? So I go a few rooms over, turn on the TV, and I see Kabul, Afghanistan about to fall. It hasn't fallen yet. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And then I was like, what can I do? And the next voice came and said, anything. And I was like, Roger that. I was like, I was like, what could I do? I knew 10 people. Those 10 people knew 10 people, those 10 people. And quickly I called anyone and everyone I knew. I got approached by a mission of a American citizen, dual citizen in Afghanistan, trapped with his 6 children. And they were in Kandahar, and they got given on day 7 that the Taliban were going to come, and his 2 oldest girls, 14 and I think 11, were going to be in 7 days going to be raped and sold off to the Taliban. And I was like, Roger, I got given a mission. I got given a timeline, and that's it. So when I called out all these people and I truly devoted my life then and trust in the Lord that this is what I had to do because I got called to do it. Within 24 hours, I owned a 50-acre compound in Alaska. 24 hours after that, I had a joint special operations team of a Navy SEAL, Army Special Forces guy, a few Force Recon guys, and an agency member. And then 24 hours after that, I had a plane and authorization to land in Afghanistan. Day 5, we rescued that American citizen out of Kandahar 1 day before his daughters were going to be raped and sold off to the Taliban. And we were told that was a suicide mission, that it was so hot in Kandahar that no one would support it, and everything from there. But that was what God sent me to do. And that was the right thing to do because who else is coming? America at the time, they weren't. they abandoned their people. They the government would we withdrew so fast and out of there that we left a lot of Americans behind, vetted interpreters and SIV, special immigration visas, guys all behind, and that's when we acted.
Did you spend time in Afghanistan prior to that, in the military, before that civilian rescue that you did?
So I'm an Iraq vet, and I did OIF and OIR. I did not do the Afghan tours. I did a whole bunch all throughout, and then so during the Afghan evacuation, that was the time I actually physically went in and went to Afghan.
And just to go back on your story, Dennis, because you kind of went through it real quick, and like you said, I mentioned about you had served for 15 years, you went on 7 deployments, and it sounds very attractive from the outside, but like you said, which you people don't get to see or understand, that you were broken, that you were in a very dark place. You got to the point that you were personally suicidal. And, a lot of times people just look at it from the outside, especially if they've never been in the military. Civilians have no clue what all that does to a human being and what it did to you before you were able to find Jesus and turn around. So tell us a little bit more, man, because I think sometimes that, how do you end up in such a dark place? Because on the outside, you wouldn't imagine that that's what was going on.
Yeah. It's something I like to call the veteran's curse. Is that be careful for what you ask for, because it'll come tenfold. So when I joined about 17-ish years ago, I joined the Marine Corps, 17 years old, and at the time, Iraq and Afghanistan were kicking, and it was going off. So I watched 9/11 growing up on TV, probably 14, 15 years old, and I knew I had to do something. I grew up in a very small town, under the poverty limit, with a very close family. My uncle was a Vietnam vet as a Marine, and so when I felt the call to serve, and I didn't really feel a place in life, and I felt like my nation was at war. I felt like I had to do something there. So at a young age, I felt pretty patriotic, especially at 17. So I chose to join the Marine Corps. 6 months later, I was in Iraq on top of a machine gun. And that changed my life. DJ Price, from small town Pennsylvania, on my 3rd IED attack. It was an IED initiated ambush, getting blown up, watching my friends get decimated, being trapped on what we refer to as the ambush site, and not being able to get off for hours on end, being shot at from the town of Ramadi. That moment changed my life, and it created such an inferno inside me. I was so filled with rage, bitter, hate and discontent. Everything that you see on movies, like Vietnam movies to war movies, everything. That is probably the most accurate thing from there. And then that spiraled me out of control. From that moment on, I lived and dedicated my life to war and combat, going to volunteering for every deployment, 7 deployments ultimately, and then every special operations school, and just kept honing my skills in to be more lethal. Because I thought, well, when I started doing it, I started seeing great success. It was like, okay, hey, God wants me to do this. He wants me to be his war vessel. I'm going to keep volunteering and doing all this stuff. It only makes sense. And then through all of this happening, then, like what you said in my bio, my life came crumbling down right before my own eyes. And eventually I convinced myself that it was my fault. And not just I convinced myself, what us as Christians call the common enemy is the devil. He got into my ear and saying, this was my fault. Your daughter was born because you dedicated your life to combat, because you focused on so much hate and discontent, that you served in that manner. This is all because she's getting tortured, and she's been born with all this because of what you did. And it sounds wild to hear and say out loud now, just me and you talking. But when the devil gets in your ear, it's literally like white noise to everything outside, and he convinces you, and he deceives you to believing that this is true. And ultimately, I attempted to commit suicide and then gave my life over to God from that moment on.
And when you did, what was that like for you? I mean, how has your life changed, and what both, mentally and but everything. What's changed about that? Because you were broken, you were suicidal, and then you're not anymore.
Yeah. So when it all was happening, I felt like my daughter was just removed from our family while I was still serving active duty. I had 3 other kids. My 4th was born. Emilia got life flighted from where we were in Alabama. She got life flighted to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, like 6, 7 states away with my wife. And now I'm stuck, full active duty with full parenting, all this other stuff. And then got like handed eventually at one point a $1.2 million medical bill.
Oof.
And that was the moment that my life immediately came crumbling down. Was like, how on earth can someone give someone a bill like this to save your daughter's life? And I couldn't wrap my head around it. And that's when I let the voice of the enemy in my head. And that's when it all spiraled from there. And at one night when I was at my lowest, I was in my garage working out. I was biking on a recumbent bike and then I was working myself up even more. I got that, the common enemy preaching in my ear where all else was white noise. And about 3 hours in intense biking, I started staring at, my handgun and was like, this was the only way out. The military will pay my family $500,000. This is because of the things I did and the choices I made in life. This is my fault. I did this. And the only really way out is this way right there. And it was just a couple, like a few yards away. Hour 3 goes by. I'm trying to think of anything to calm me down, trying to think of a single reason not to blow my brains out. Hour 3 goes by. I'm gun in hand, and I can't think of a single reason. I call one of my close friends because the military preaches that if you're in a time of need, call somebody. If you're out on a limb and you have no other thing, call a friend. So I called one of my buddies, one of my close peers, and he didn't pick up. It was late at night, I called him a few times and I was like, maybe he can give me one reason not to do it. And he didn't pick up. I was like, Roger, that this is all she wrote. Like no one picked up. I tried to do it. It was like, that's it. So as I put it up to my head, a random statistic ran through my head, and it was that my children are sleeping a few rooms over. A statistic ran through my head and said that if a parent commits suicide, your children then are 5 times more likely to then commit suicide.
Oof.
And I haven't read that stat in years, and randomly that popped in my head, and I was like, oh my God. And then immediately it came up another one, almost the same thing. I have 1 son and 3 daughters. So males growing up without a father are 5 times, it actually says 3 to 20 more times likely to be incarcerated of males growing up without a father. And then followed up another stat in my head that females growing up without a father are 5 times more likely to have preteen pregnancies. Those stats ran through my head when I was at the end of my rope, and I was like, man, how is it I can't hack it one more day? I can't hack it one more month, one more year, and I have a daughter in the hospital right now fighting for her life. A baby fighting for her life to live, and I can't even hack it and fake it one more day for my kids to have a better family and to have a better future. So I put down the gun. I was like, man, I'm so messed up right now. I went in my house from my garage, turned on the TV, which is Cornerstone, Christian one, and I was like, dude, I'm so messed up. I need help right now. And just like you said in your bio, I'm a sniper instructor. So just like in sniping, if your gun is off, no matter what you do in life, it is going to be off the mark. And anytime you try to aim. So what do? You re-zero your gun. So for me, my foundation of being a Christian, growing up that way, and everything was like, I need to get back in the church. I need to go back to God. I need to go back fundamentally of who I am, what is right, and build from there. So that's when I decided to, like what you said, I chose family instead of career. I got out at just under early retirement at 15 years. Moved out to Children's Hospital Philadelphia. Was like, dude, I'll work 4 jobs. I'll work day and night just so my kids have a better family.
Wow. Well, you know, that moment obviously changed your life, and that decision changed your life, and that rebirth or going back to who you were changed your life, and your family and everybody else, you know, benefited because you were able to do that. So, you know, what a powerful story, Dennis. Just to kind of like pivot back to where we were before we kind of went down that dark path before you turned it around. You know, you said to go back to the Afghanistan stuff, you heard that voice telling you, you know, what can I do? And then you did all these things. And I know, I had mentioned to you, I had met across people because I work in support for veterans in the film industry. And I ran across some folks who had done this movie, Send Me, which was about going into Afghanistan. And I knew some other groups that were doing the same thing at the time. All these veterans who had decided to step up and go do what our government wasn't doing to rescue people in need. So I'm going to play a quick video of that movie, Send Me, and then I want you to share your experience and what you did with that so that the audience can hear that. So let me just fill that up on the screen right now. And let's see if I can, and tell me, I think the voice should be on.
It's impossible to explain the level of desperation that people felt. I mean, you just think that the first couple of days when people were trying to hang on to the bottom of C-17s, that's desperation that Americans don't understand that level of desperation.
It was a very clear mission, which was to go rescue Aziz.
I knew that if I didn't personally intervene, Aziz would die.
Chad and I connected. We'd worked together over the last several years. And I just said, you know, how can I help?
It's great we're going to go help Aziz, but I'm talking to this orphanage over here that's 3,500 orphans. Let's not just help this limited group. Let's help as many people as we can.
I was either going to be sitting on my couch tweeting about how this is all up, or I was going to be one of the 12 people that was making it a little less.
24 hours later, tickets are booked. Then we're getting on a plane. I knew I would be more of an asset working with whoever's on the ground.
The military was not allowed to go outside the wire. That was the rules of engagement.
They can't go outside and help people. Americans, something can happen right in front of them. They can't go outside and help.
The Taliban looked right at them and just executed the woman on their hood just to try to elicit response. Just to be like, super clear about who is in charge here. I'm going to murder this woman right in front of you, and there's nothing that you can do about it.
Their version of crowd control was when it got out of hand, they would just dump a AK mag into the crowd.
Whoever just made this decision to turn his bus around, essentially just murdered these people. But some of those people are Americans.
There's not enough emotional capacity left in my soul to be able to mourn 4 busloads of people that are about to die. I'm trying to save a woman and her children, but off to like 5 feet away from me is a dead child. There was just everywhere.
Oops, let me just get that off the air. All right, we're back. You back, Dennis?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw it at that screening, and I'd known Nick because I went to the GI Film Festival, and I met him years ago at another movie. And then, like I said, there were some other friends who were doing, veteran friends who, with similar organizations, were putting themselves out doing similar rescues in Afghanistan. Tell us your experience. You work with Chad, and then tell us the future of this. So, for people who've never seen it up close, especially civilians, it's just, it blows your mind, the brutality, all of that, and then you willing to go out there and do what it took. Share.
Yeah, so that was the predecessor of what we then formed called Save Our Allies. It was with Tim Kennedy, Sarah Verardo, Nick, and a few other people like Chad Robichaux, myself, and a few other guys if I'm missing them. So we had to do what was exactly what I said on my story. We had the call to serve, and it was amazing because when this was happening, I didn't know any of these people before. I didn't know Chad Robichaux before. I really didn't know Tim Kennedy. I had no clue really who. I don't follow that stuff. So, so when I was standing, I got invited eventually after I saved 55 people. I got invited to go to the Senate and form an organization, which then became Save Our Allies. We had to go around the room and say who we are, what we did, and what we can do in the future for this new company that we're or nonprofit that we're doing, so we can go and save the remainder of Americans left behind. And that's when I eventually stood up and said who I was, what I could do in the future, and what I was doing in the past for the Afghan evacuations. After that meeting, Chad Robichaux came up to me. He's like, man, I feel really compelled with your story. He's like, please tell me about your career and everything from there. I give him a short little blurb. And then he's like, that's amazing. He's like, I was also from third Force Recon. He's like, I also was in JSOC and did, 8 short deployments over to Afghanistan. And we have a very similar career path. So he's like, how would you like to go and do to go and save the remainder of the people who are still there after the fall of Kabul? And I've never met this guy in my life. I have no clue who he is. And I'm like, well, I told you that I had the call to God. I told my wife before I came down here. I said, and it was my company's quote after that, and it's what I try to live my life by now. And it says, in order for evil to prevail, good men must stand by and do nothing. So I'll say that again, just because it really sets up who I am and how I try to live life, kind of like you live courageously. So in order for evil to prevail, good men must stand by and do nothing. I said, I don't know. I didn't know who he was. He told me his background, everything. And I said, well, if there's still Americans that are left there, then yes, I'll go. He's like, okay, awesome. And like 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane going with Chad Robichaux, and I had to like quick and hurry Google search who he is. And I'm like, okay, I feel a little safer now because he does have the same background as me. He was an MMA fighter, a massive believer in God. And, it's kind of like, old core, new core, mixing up together. And so we end up doing about 90 miles of border recon and continuous operations behind enemy lines, just me and him, to go and find routes for more people to build escape routes and evacuation routes out of Afghanistan from a neighboring country. So throughout that time, there were the Panjshir River Valley of Afghanistan was covered in landmines. It had because Tajikistan was like one of the last owned provinces of the USSR, the Soviet Union. So there's Russian KGB snipers in the mountains. There's Russian tanks everywhere. There's Tajikistan guards, spread throughout that whole entire border. Then eventually, as you got hired northeast, there was Chinese militants guarding the border, and they're trying to stop anyone, Afghanis, trying to come up north and evade out of there. And that's where me and Chad was, doing just 2-man special operations of trying to identify routes to get these Americans or vetted interpreters out and into safety.
And just, I don't know if this is if this is a picture of it, but I'm going to put this up. It is something you sent me. So let me just real quick share the screen and see if it's up there. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. All right, I'm gonna try. I'll try that after. But anyway, this is a picture of one of the things here, right? Of that area, and that's the area you were talking about. How long were you there with Chad? How long were you doing that?
It starts becoming a blur just because like we didn't sleep. Like we went days without sleeping, and sometimes you would have to share like an hour of sleep a night, sleeping on the side of the mountains in Afghanistan, like hiding out and like in the rocks, that if someone would catch you, then you're gone, like you're executed. So even though we slept like 20 minutes per each night, we weren't really sleeping. So I think that the total actual mission was like 2 weeks long of on the ground there, but like we were actually there for like a little under a month or so. But we were running like about 10 plus days of just continuous operations through there. That's when we covered the 90 miles. And that picture was a picture that I took when we were about 3 miles on foot in the Panjshir River Valley. And we heard, hey, they cover this area with landmines, all this other, so we're walking through there trying to establish routes. And all of a sudden, like 3 miles in, we like look up and I see the most animated sign. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, he's like, what? And I like hurry up and took a picture of it. And I was like, dude, we got to get off this road right now. And we got to get back into a vehicle. We got to figure out a way to, bypass and then to select a different area that is more feasible. So yeah.
Well, this is the video you sent me. I think it'll play now. Let me just give it a shot. And this is, if it's on the screen, do you see it?
I do.
All right. Yeah, this is just to see the scope of these mountains. And
yeah, that's a video I took when if I think Congresswoman Hartzler, whenever she speaks, she talks about me getting shot at by a sniper. So where I was taking that video is the exact spot that I got shot at twice by the KGB sniper up in the mountains. That's the Panjshir River, and yeah, it's the harshest terrain I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. Well, before I played, I do want to play the Congresswoman's video as well. But before I go there, Dennis, so you there for 10 days scouting out these ranges, you and Chad, and just in the most dangerous area that you can possibly be. You're not getting any support from the U.S. government or the military or anything like that. The U.S. government made a decision to back out. And then by doing that, you on your own. So, and your whole team that further. So after you did that, you scouted it out. Eventually the team came in and started to take people out of Afghanistan into other countries, right? Surrounding countries to save their lives. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we pretty much built an intelligence packet of viable routes, and then we eventually handed out to U.S. Intelligence agencies from there, and then that would get funneled down to those people, and then they would get given a route to for lack of a better word, to save their life due to this intelligence packet that we just built out. So that it was able for them to get in and get out of areas and for lack of a better word, save their lives from some of those areas. It identified Taliban checkpoints to Russian KGB or what used to be called KGB areas, and then it just this massive packet that we passed up.
And tell me if I'm wrong. I know you guys rescued hundreds of people by your efforts, and I know recently about a couple of weeks ago, someone reached out to me to connect them with somebody else, and they're still to this day rescuing people and taking them into Pakistan, and then trying to get them out of Pakistan and get them into a better place, because Pakistan isn't the safest place for them either. So this ongoing volunteer work to save people who supported us and were part of our efforts over there continues. Is that true?
So now that all of the smoke is cleared, and after the Afghan evacuations happened, the State Department retook that mission back, and they do have channels and and areas for these people to put up through there, and they dropped the hammer hardcore and said, no more, cease and assist all operation. Now we are getting it back, and any kind of like action that continues to do this stuff will be charged with. So we now the State Department has regrouped and has policies in place for these Afghan SIVs or P1 and P2 status to get out of Afghanistan. But it's owned by the Taliban. So like,
Sure.
How are they going to have paperwork? How are they going to get out of there? So it is a very sad situation that people are ongoing and battling with. But the best thing we can do is point them to the State Department and tell them now they have to trust that true process on what's going on, and look into neighboring countries and to how to properly evacuate out of there.
And tell me a little, you had mentioned a little bit before we got on the show about another film project that's coming up in the future, and that's going to kind of tell a little bit more of this story. So tell the audience a little bit about that and what that looks like and when it's coming out.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much I could say on the movie part, but so the book Saving Aziz, it already came out this past year. So Aziz, actually, I'm in my office right now. His office, it's right here next to me, and we work together. So Aziz in Send Me, that's what started this whole thing is Chad Robichaux's love for his fellow brother who saved his life every day in 8 deployments in Afghanistan as an AFO, Advanced Force Operator, and they were doing 2-man operations the whole entire time. So he went in to save his best friend, true love for a brother, and it then quickly evolved into saving, ultimately I think it's like 15,000 people through Send Me and Save Our Allies. So the movie, the book Saving Aziz came out with Chad Robichaud, and he writes it very well, where it's like extremely accurate. That's Chad and myself in Afghanistan right there in the Panjshir River Valley. So he writes it with like uncanny ability of conversations we had. And it's like word for word. I'm like, and I always ask him, like, how did you remember? He's like, I journal every day and I just write my thoughts. I'm like, that's amazing that you're able to tell a joke or something a conversation we had with extreme detail a year or so ago. So he wrote that book. I highly recommend everyone to read it. It truly glorifies God in this miracle and not just our actions. Because like 10 to 12 guys, regardless if you're special operations or not, no way were we smart enough, capable enough to pull something this magnitude off. Like, it was truly God's miracle, and we're just thankful to be a part of it.
And what is the name of the book again for people?
Saving Aziz. So saving Aziz. And then Aziz was the interpreter and my close friend now. He actually he spent my daughter's birthday party yesterday at our house with his kids.
Wow. Well, I definitely check out Saving Aziz, and then next year, and you can't get into it too much now, but there'll be a film project that will also take that story and share that as well with the general public. I'm going to throw up some quick pictures of you in different aspects of training at different folks' periods in your life. So I'm just throwing them up to give people a little bit of a look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that you've done, and then you can kind of comment on some of them as I come back to you. But I just wanted to give folks a little bit of some of the visuals of what this looked like. So just comment on some of that if you may.
Yeah. So all of those ones in the military that you just saw, or like me in like training, whatever, that was all what I said when that mission came down. And ultimately, I think the last picture that had the family of from Kandahar. Yes. So that was the first American I ever saved out of Afghanistan from Kandahar. He was a Alaskan citizen, dual citizen in Afghanistan. And that's what started it all. And I got him out like 45 minutes before Abbey Gate blew up.
Wow.
So it was crazy.
And Abbey Gate was the right at the thing where 13 people died, 13 soldiers, yes. Correct?
Yeah, it is. And then you see in the book Saving Aziz, it talks about there was a 40, I think it was 42 Russian tank convoy. So that picture was taken on the side of the road from a camera of the Russian tanks that were headed to our position, where we had to conduct a E&E, which is escape and evade. That was headed to our position when we called for Quick Reaction Force (QRF) to immediately escape and or get out of there off the objective in the Panjshir River Valley, and that was headed immediately to our position.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to play the video of the Congresswoman. I'm going to play that right now. We'll come back from that, and then I want to pivot into the work you're doing today with Mighty Oaks Foundation, what they do, how important they are, their efforts for veterans, and how people can support Mighty Oaks. But let me play the video first, and then we'll come back to talk about Mighty Oaks.
Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Hartzler, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the extraordinary heroism of Chad Robichaud and Staff Sergeant Dennis Price during the Afghanistan evacuation last year. Their selfless actions evacuating tens of thousands of Afghan interpreters and their families, vulnerable women and children, persecuted Christians, and American citizens represents the highest levels of patriotism. I met Chad through his work supporting our nation's veterans as the founder of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, a leading nonprofit serving the military, veteran, and first responder communities around the world. Through faith-based combat trauma and resiliency programs, Chad has been instrumental in ensuring our brave warriors are supported when they return home from the battlefield. Chad's work doesn't stop there. He's also the co-founder of Save Our Allies, a nonprofit focused on the evacuation and recovery of Americans, our allies, and the most vulnerable people trapped in Afghanistan. Save Our Allies began as a personal quest for Chad as he set out to rescue his long-time friend and Afghan interpreter. However, the mission quickly evolved because of Chad's compassion for all people and his servant's heart. While the U.S. military held the Kabul airport in Afghanistan, the Save Our Allies Task Force successfully extracted approximately 17,000 evacuees in a period of 10 days. Despite these courageous efforts, a report from the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff estimated over 142,000 vulnerable Afghans remained in the country following the exit from Kabul. With the complete takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, the report projected 20 million women will be vulnerable to sexual abuse and slavery. Christians would be persecuted and executed. Afghan interpreters and their families would be hunted down and killed. Children would be abused through religious manipulation. And the 1,000 plus Americans left behind would be killed or held hostage for ransom. Understanding the ruthlessness of the Taliban as a former Force Recon Marine, Chad Robichaud knew the rescue mission had to continue. In response, Save Our Allies launched several operations to explore new ways for extractions. Robichaud and his team first identified possible ground evacuations that could be feasible by cross-border movements into Tajikistan and quickly planned a reconnaissance operation. Robichaud hand-selected Staff Sergeant Dennis Price, a Force Recon Marine and Scout Sniper, to take part in the mission. I want to share two stories from that mission to highlight their incredible acts of sacrifice, service, and bravery. Early in the mission, Staff Sergeant Price sought a higher vantage point to evaluate a potential river crossing area. Upon his ascent up the mountain, he came under sniper fire 2 separate times, pushing him back to return to the safe house to reconvene with Robichaud and discuss moving forward with the operation. These two brave men humbly discussed their families, loved ones, and all that would be left behind should they not make it out of this mission. Still, both men agreed to continue their mission of building safe passage for American and Afghan evacuees. During day 3 of the mission and upon confirmation of a possible river crossing, Staff Sergeant Price found himself 10 feet away from an armed Chinese militant hiding in the bushes. utilizing the vegetation as concealment. Robichaud, using his uncanny observation and combat skills, noticed the looming threat and physically ushered Staff Sergeant Price into a nearby vehicle before he could be captured or killed, ultimately saving his life. Because of this heroic act, the two men were able to continue providing real-time information to American intelligence agencies. During their 10-day operation, Robichaud and Price were able to cover 90 miles of border between Afghanistan and Tajikistan, remaining undetected by countless Tajik, Russian, and Chinese military patrols, all while avoiding Taliban-infested areas and checkpoints. These examples and countless others that cannot be shared due to their sensitive nature underscore their exemplary efforts undertaken by both Americans behind enemy lines to collect the critical information needed to bring so many to safety. Mr. Speaker, I am humbled to stand before the House to honor their courageous bravery and willingness to sacrifice their lives for their fellow man. The mission that these men completed has saved and will continue to save hundreds and possibly thousands of lives. On behalf of a grateful nation, I would like to express my sincere gratitude. God bless Chad Robichaud and Staff Sergeant Price for their service to our country. I yield back.
All right. Powerful story about what you guys went through there. Dennis, tell us anything beyond that of what, she shared, or anything you want to share beyond that, about that effort.
No, I mean, I'm so thankful to, to be, honored by Congresswoman Hartzler for that. And then to be, ultimately, like I said, everyone always comes up and tells me, thank you for everything you did. And like all this other, and I'm like, honestly, like I was just called. I felt the Lord call me, and I was just obedient. I'm just thankful. Like this was God's miracle. And I was just so happy to be a part of it. And that's all. So it's nothing I really did, just obedience.
Ever since you obviously made that change, you've gone on to do so much, and this is just one piece of it, and you continue to do it today, and with organization, the Mighty Oaks Foundation, that was mentioned multiple times. And I think, let me see if it is right here on the screen, about the Mighty Oaks Foundation. You work for them now. You're, let me grab a quick picture of you up here, International Program Manager with them. Tell us a little bit about the Mighty Oaks program. They do so much work for veterans, and maybe just share what it is, how people can support them, how people can financially support them, or just support their effort. Tell us a little bit about that, Dennis.
Yeah, so Mighty Oaks Foundation is an amazing organization by who's created from one of my best friends in life and mentors, Chad Robichaud, who was in the who we did this operations with. A younger me would have benefited a lot from Mighty Oaks Foundation. I just suffered through the pain and trials of life, trying to figure it out way late. So Mighty Oaks, it's a Christian organization that helps veterans with PTSD, and it ultimately it helps them through spiritual resiliency. And through our program, we it's all inclusive. We take a veteran who is in need, or is in need of help. If it's referenced by their wife, their family, another service member, or themselves, they go to one of our locations. We put them through the process, and it has seen great results, and it has helped save thousands and thousands of lives. And it's an amazing organization that helps veterans who are suffering from PTSD, and through using spiritual resiliency, and bringing God into all this, which, like I said in my testimony, is how I was able to, ultimately change my life over. But I had to tragically to find out the hard way. And I wish I would have had an organization like Mighty Oaks early on to teach me that.
How long has Mighty Oaks existed? When did Chad found it, and where are you based? And then once again, Obviously, people can go to the website, Mighty Oaks Foundation, to get more information, to support, to donate, to do whatever you can to support Mighty Oaks, and I recommend it. But tell us, when did it start? And like I said, where is it based, and that kind of information.
Yeah, so we now are building our Mighty Oaks headquarters here in Texas, in kind of like the Conroe area. It's like an hour and a half north of Houston. That is Mighty Oaks HQ. We have about 4 to 5 locations across the U.S. in California, 2 in Texas, 1 in Ohio, and 1 in Virginia. That we send out our students out to, and realistically, it doesn't matter where you're from, because we're gonna pay for your plane ticket. We're gonna pay for you to go to an all-inclusive program, and we're gonna pay for it back. So it doesn't really matter if you live in Ohio and you want to go, because like you have to be at that location for that entirety. So so that's where we're at. It was founded about 13, 14 years ago with Chad Robichaud. And things that, similarly to my testimony, that he suffered in life, panic attacks, anxiety, severe PTSD, and eventually, trying to attempt suicide. Only through his relationship with Jesus Christ was he able to then find God and live a spiritual life and lean on that spiritual resiliency pillar that we all too often forget about. We know there's emotional strength. We know there's emotional, physical, and then social with our friends, and then there's spiritual. So just like a chair, if one of those legs are broken off or weak, it looks like it's standing, but once you slightly apply pressure, it's immediately going to tumble. And that's what we've seen in the veteran community that people all too forget about. And if it's, how America's shifting and all that and pushing God out, but that's what we have seen. And now I'm the international programs manager. Regardless of your religion or regardless of your country, we still see that these 4 pillars of resiliency, it remains true. So when we go to like Ukraine or like Poland border, or like teaching Afghan SIVs here in America about spiritual resiliency, it's still the same problem. It's still spiritual resiliency, and through that will you overcome, PTSDs, and it'll ultimately restore families and change your legacy. So.
But it's powerful because, like you're saying, that those 4 legs and having that resiliency, because at the end of the day, stress, post-traumatic stress is a human reaction to trauma. So it's what the body does when you go through trauma, whatever form of trauma it is, right? There's war trauma, there's other trauma. But what you're trying to do is take the skills and give people the resiliency to basically overcome the trauma that they experience, because the trauma is real. They experienced it. But now how do they deal with the trauma? What do they need to overcome that trauma? And those 4 legs, and particularly what you're suggesting, the spiritual resiliency, is so important to give them the ability to overcome what they experienced.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah. And then I guess to answer one of your other questions was like, what do we ongoing efforts? And so now that I'm dedicating my life to to serving the Lord and truly helping others, that's all it is like. And there's so many organizations out there. There's Mighty Oaks who are saving 22. The stats are about 22 veteran suicides a day. That's ridiculous. When I go to have lunch with my kids and I see that they have on average like 17 to 20 students, if you just put that in perspective, like each one of their class is veterans a day worth everyday suicide. Like that's a pandemic right there. Like what are we doing in America to stop that? And Mighty Oaks has been referenced multiple times in Congress now of Truth About PTSD, the books, to spiritual resiliency, and is now being advertised as one of the leading organizations that are preventing these suicides and helping actually research and everything saying that we're helping tremendously the veteran population who are people who go through these courses. So there's organizations like Mighty Oaks out there doing amazing things from God and doing great things out there in the world. There's people like I mentioned, CERT, Slave Free Project, Free Burma Rangers, with Dave Eubanks, who's truly doing God's work all throughout the world, in like Syria to, all the other places in Burma and, around the world that I'm not sure what can be disclosed. But these are all amazing people who are they're doing the same thing. They're just helping other people, and there's no return on investment. It's not like you're donating to these organizations and they're they're out there saving lives, changing legacies every day, and helping people. And that's what I love about this. Like, ultimately it's humanity. Just like when Afghanistan fell, it was, what are people doing? It's just truly when there is no more government solution and there's no other thing like that. People stand up above the ranks and they help their fellow man. And I absolutely love this world I'm in. I have mentors now, like Pastor Rudy Gonzalez, who we mentioned, Chad Robichaud, to, Joe Fairchild, and a few other people who I might be forgetting, but who are truly mentored in my life and changed my life and allowed me to grow in ways I've never imagined before.
Well, I think, one, having met you and having experienced, a little bit of your story that you gave me when I was there, just I'm honored and blessed to have, come across and have met you in the way that I did. And I think, what I saw, of course, is your, dedication to your faith, your dedication to service, your dedication to others, your dedication to make a difference, and that's, I think, we can all learn from that. We all need to learn from that, and have that spiritual resilience, and then be willing to answer the call to action when the call comes, in which form it comes. And you've answered it in so many ways, both in Afghanistan, with Mighty Oaks Foundation, with CERT Ministries. You just do so much of doing that. And I think that's an inspiration to people, whether they were in the military or not, that there's a way you can serve. There's a way you can step up. There's a way you can, make a difference in life. And you're doing that. So like I said, I'm honored and blessed that I met you, Dennis. As we get close to wrapping up, anything else, I just you want to close on, share? I would recommend people go to Mighty Oaks Foundation website, check out all the great work they're doing, and support them and donate and see what Dennis is doing with them. So that's one way that you can get involved. Anything else you would want to wrap up on and just share with the audience?
Yeah. So one thing, like you mentioned, you don't, and this is what I say in one of my testimonies, is that you don't have to be some kind of special operator or any kind of veteran to do something in life. Like Rosa Parks and all these amazing people in life, put a stand and use their sphere of influence to do great things out there. They weren't, a special forces operator or anything like that. They just did the right thing and they knew what had to be done. Harriet Tubman was not a Force Recon Scout sniper or anything like that. She was this little old black lady who didn't have shoes, who created the Underground Railroad and walked in the wintertime without shoes to help do the right thing. You don't have to be a trained operator. You don't have to be a veteran. You don't have to do anything to do amazing things out there in the world. It's finding those resources and these amazing groups that we mentioned before, from like Mighty Oaks to CERT to Free Burma Rangers, any of those people who are doing amazing things. You don't have to have the background to do that. All like in Proverbs in the Bible, it says, trust the Lord with all your heart and do not lean to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will strengthen your path. So when we hear all this, like I said, Harriet Tubman, she was not a trained operator. She did, we talk about her in all through history because she did the right thing, because she lived courageously and she knew what had to be done regardless of the ramifications. So just go out there, find organizations who are doing amazing things, help support them, donate, retweet, follow, what all that other social media stuff is, and see how you can actually help support them.
100%. I think that's a great way to end it because you just summed it up. People are being called to service. People are being called to action. And whoever you are, no matter what a walk of life you've come from or where you've come from, the call to action, the call to service is to you individually as well. It's not to only others, it's to you. And so I think the way you just summed that up and asked people to do that, I think is a great way to do it. So I totally echo that, man.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, brother, thank you. It's like I said, it's been an honor and blessing to meet you. I look forward to meeting you, again in the future with some of the stuff that you're doing, and whatever I can do, always feel free to reach out to me. And I, support Mighty Oaks Foundation. Go there and support the work that Dennis is doing with that organization and other organizations. So Dennis, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time, and God bless you, brother. And like I said, look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much, and God bless you. Have a great day.
You too.